Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another week in the weekly parsha. So, if I recall from years past, usually right before Pesach, we start getting into the Pesach mode. So we have a little bit of a preparation for the glorious days of Yom Tov that are coming upon us, for the Siddharm that are highlights for most of us of the entire year. Those that will be with their grandchildren in the Holy Land certainly want to have the greatest ideas that they can share over at a table that will be replete, I'm sure, with Kedusha and holiness and sanctity and elevation and simcha, all the wonderful things that we're all looking forward to this year on Pesach. So tonight, by no coincidence, is ROSH CHODESH NISSAN. And we just had last week where we read as the Haftarah and the Maftir, HaChodesh Hazeh Lechem, that this is the Chodesh that is to you. Now, in the Haggadah, as you will all see when you sit down and say tonight, the Haggadah says a very peculiar statement. And it says like this, Yachal miRosh Chodesh. I would have thought that I could start reciting the Haggadah from ROSH CHODEsh NISSAN. Why would you think such a thing? Everybody knows that Pesach is on the night of the 15th of Nisan. Everybody knows that the Geulah, the redemption, took place on that night, and that's why we're celebrating the great miracles and the signs and the wonders that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made. Everybody knows that etched in history is that night which we call Leil Shimur, the night that HaKadosh Baruch Hu guards all of Klal Yisrael, and we sit by the Seder table and we recount the tale and we rejoice in the Simcha. And everybody knows that the night of the Seder is the night that you tell over the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And yet the Haggadah itself writes, Yachal miRosh CHODEsh. I would have thought that I could actually begin telling over the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim from ROSH CHODEsh NISSAN. Comes along the Torah to teach me, you can't. Because it says, Bayomo on that day. If it would be that day, I would think I could start telling over during the daytime. Who says you have to wait all the way until the evening of the 15th, already from earlier, Erev Pesach, I could tell it over? No, because of this. Because of this, Geulah, this redemption, because of the Korban Pesach, because of all the miracles, the Yetzias Mitzrayim, only when matzah and maror is in front of you are you actually allowed to tell over the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim and start reading from the Haggadah. But as we know, when a person is learning Gemara, when they are learning things, you have to know what was the Havamina, what was the supposition. What was the supposition? What was the supposition? It's good that you hear more. What was the supposition of the Gemara, of the Haggadah? What was its Hava Amina? What was it thinking? What was the Haggadah doubtful about that for some reason you would actually think that even though everybody knows that Chag HaMatzah is on the 15th day of Nisan, and everybody knows that that's the night that Klal Yisrael was taken out of Mitzrayim. And it happened in an instant, just like that. That's why we have matzahs, and that's why we're running, and that's why we have a celebration. What was the Haggadah thinking? You would have thought you could start telling over the Haggadah from tonight. If you go home tonight and tell your wife, you know what? I think tonight we should stay with the Haggadah. She said, "Are you crazy? Pesach's in 2 weeks. I'm not done cleaning yet." I said, "No, I know, but I might have thought that I could say it over tonight." What is so meyuchid? What is so unique and so special about ROSH CHODEsh NISSAN that a person who knows when Pesach really is going to be, and they know when the Haggadah is supposed to be said over, they would think that actually tonight you can start saying it over. What is the shot over here? You ever thought about this?
Good fish.
Okay, and furthermore, Rashi, in the very beginning of the Chumash, and many of the Mefarshim over there, asked the following question: if the tachlis of Kol HaTorah, if the point of all of the Torah that we received in our Sinai is that Klal Yisrael should be filled up with mitzvahs, and our whole life should be revolving around every single mitzvah that we could possibly do. So then why does the Torah start with Bereshis Bara Elokim and the whole Sefer Bereshis with loads and loads and loads of stories, when there's almost not a single mitzvah that you find in all of Sefer Bereshis, maybe Bris Milah, and anyway it's going to be given to us later on after we become a nation? Why does the Torah start over there? It should start over here in the parsha of HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodeshin Nissan Lachem L'Chodshei Hashana. Says Rashi, if the point of all the Torah is that we should be replete with mitzvah observance, then why don't we start the Torah at the point where we receive the first mitzvah as a nation? And that's HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, the Rosh Chodesh of Nissan, where it informs us and reveals to us the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh. And yet the Torah doesn't start there. The Torah does start with Bereshis Bara Elokim. And the Torah does start with all of the life of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and Nehemiah, Sarah, Rachel, and Leah. And the Torah does go through all the details of their lives and all of the challenges and everything they had in between. And it doesn't start over here with a Rosh Chodesh Nissan, which is the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh. So the Sforno writes over there in his introduction to the Chumash that in Achinami it's true that the purpose of Kol Torah Kulo is mitzvahs. No one's going to argue with that. The reason that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put us into this world, and the reason that He took us to Har Sinai, and the reason that we were waiting for the Yetzias Mitzrayim, like Moshe Rabbeinu says time and time again, Havdun Elokim ala Har Hazeh, that we should be able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu on that mountain. What does it mean to serve Hashem? When we will receive the Torah, and we will know all the mitzvahs that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to do, then we'll truly be able to serve Hashem. So it's true, says the Sforno in his introduction to his commentary on the Chumash. Yes, we all are in this for the sake of mitzvahs. However, if you go through Sefer Bereshis, in that Sefer it teaches us how to have a munah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Every single act that the Avos HaKadoshim went through, every single tefillah that the Imahis uttered from their mouths, every challenge that they found themselves in and they overcame it, it's all to teach us how to be a maimed, how to be a true believer in the Rebbeinu Shalom. And therefore we start the Torah over there. We don't start it over here by HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. But you do see from this question that just like I would have thought I could start reading the Haggadah from the beginning of Chodesh Nissan, I also would have thought that I could start the Torah from HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, from this precious mitzvah that we have over here. So the question is, what is so unique about the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh? What is so unique about HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, about this month, the Chodesh of Nissan, that I would have thought to myself, the Torah could start here? I would have thought to myself that on the month of Nisan, I could already begin reading the Haggadah and telling over the story to my children on this night over here. This is Nisan tonight. So the Sforno says on these words, a very revolutionary and a very ingenious idea, and it is hopefully the answer to our questions. Says the Sforno, Chodesh Hazeh Lachem. Let's read the words one more time. Vayom Hashem al Moshe. Hashem said to Moshe, Aaron, to Aaron, Be'eretz Mitzrayim, while they were still in the land of Egypt, which is a chiddushim of itself. All of the Torah was given in Midbar Sinai. It wasn't given in Mitzrayim, which was the land of all the Tumah, but this mitzvah in and of itself was able to be received by Klal Yisrael in the impurities, in the wasteland of Mitzrayim. And what is the mitzvah? HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. This Chodesh is yours. The other months were not ours. HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. This month of Nisan, it belongs to you. And what about all the other months up until now? Didn't belong to us? Rosh Chodeshim. It's the Rosh, the head of the Chodeshim of the months. Rishon Hu Lachem. It's the first one for you. I mean, it's repeating itself. HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. This month belongs to you. Rishon Lechem, it's the first month for you. L'chad she'ashana, for all of the months of the year. Says this photo, a very beautiful and a very deep idea. This month is Lechem, it belongs to you. Rosh Chodeshim, it is the Rosh, the head of all of the months. Mikan ve'elech, from now, starting on Rosh Chodesh Nissan, ve'elech, and forevermore. Yiyu achadashim shelechem, the months will belong to you. Starting now, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're in Mitzrayim, you're on the precipice of the Geulah, of the redemption, but you're still in Mitzrayim. And you've gone through 210 years of slavery, where you were meshubed, you were enslaved, you were beaten, you were tortured, you were living your lives in the shmutz of Mitzrayim underneath the rulership of Paro HaRashim. However, starting today, Rosh Chodesh Nissan, everything is changing. Mikan ve'elech yachadashim zelechem, from now on, the months of the year belong to you. La'asais behem kiritzayincham, you can do with them whatever you would like. You want to go to Tahiti? Go ahead. The month belongs to you. You want to go to the skyscrapers in New York City and look down and see how high up you can be? Go ahead. It belongs to you. You want to sleep in for shachris? You want to eat a good steak? You want to go to this bar over here? You can do whatever you want. The months belong to you. Up until now, it doesn't belong to you. Up until now, you're in somebody else's rishus, somebody else's domain. Somebody else had a hold on your neck. But mikan ve'elech, now, it all belongs to you. You can do whatever you want. But in the days of slavery, in the days of our enslavement to the Mitzrayim, to the Egyptians, your days did not belong to you. When you are an Eved, you have nothing of your own. When you have an other, when you have a master that is ruling over you, you're not within your own rishus, your own jurisdiction. You don't have the right to go where you want and do what you want when you want. As long as you are an Eved, as long as you are enslaved to somebody else, you are at their beck and call, and you have nothing to do to be able to wiggle your way out of it. Like Chazal teach us, La'olam, there never was an Eved shabarach min Mitzrayim. There never was a slave that was able to escape from Egypt. You have countless stories from the Holocaust where there were people that were able to escape from the entrenchment over there at Auschwitz. They somehow slipped away under the barbed wire fence in the middle of the night, ran away from the dogs, ran away from the Nazis, and they survived in the forest for 2 years until the war was over and they were found. You have countless stories of people that were enslaved in different places. I think it was just recently, there was some guy that escaped from prison, if I'm not mistaken. Mark, you would know. Yeah, there was a guy that was just escaped from a high security prison. He found, I don't know, with the spoon and dug out the dirt all through the wall. He found somebody again. He escaped from prison. There's always a way to escape. There's always at least one person that will have the chutzpah and the courage to be able to do something daring and get out of it. But there never ever was a slave who escaped from Mitzrayim. In 210 years of slavery, of servitude, the Jewish, with all the Yiddish cup that we have, not a single Yid was able to escape from Mitzrayim. Says the Sforno, as long as you were enslaved in Egypt, your days did not belong to you. It was inescapable. You were squeezed into the confines of Mitzrayim. You were servants to others, and their will. Your will doesn't count. Your desire doesn't count. What you would like to accomplish, what you would like to do for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's gone. It doesn't mean anything. Because you are under the shlita, you're under the rulership of somebody else. And that's the way that it was up until this moment, Rosh Chodesh Nissan. Lefikach, therefore, Rishon hu lechem lechodesh hashana. This month, Nissan, is the Rishon, is the beginning of all the Chodesh Hashana, of all of the months of the year. Why? Because starting on Rosh Chodesh Nissan, your mitzias, your reality of the bechira, of being able to make decisions and choose what you want to do, it begins tonight. Once that the Rabbi Shalom gave us the month of Nisan, he says, I'm changing the mitzias, I'm changing the reality of Klal Yisrael. That means that for 210 years, while we were enslaved in Mitzrayim, and nobody could escape and nobody could go free. And we know, of course, that Mitzrayim means Meitzar, means a confining area where you're squeezed in, there's no escape. All of that time, says the Sfornoi, you had no decisions, you had nothing that you could do on your own. You were enslaved and you were overwhelmed by the ways of Paro and this entire nation. And you are stuck in that land, you can't do anything. However, starting on Rosh Chodesh Nissan, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes and he delivers the month into our hand, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm now putting time and I'm putting reality into your hands. And you are now free to do with your life anything that you want to do. The Mitzrayim no longer have rulership over you. Paro is no longer the one that can enslave you. Whoever is out to get you, your enemies, they will be held back. And you, Klal Yisrael, now that it belongs lechem to you, and it's the Chidush, HaChidush, the language of the Chidush, means it's renewing you. You now are going to be able to do with it whatever you want, which means that the Geulah of Mitzrayim, the redemption of the Jewish people from Eretz Mitzrayim, it all begins on the night of Rosh Chodesh. That means that the seeds of Geulah redemption, that means the sparks of Kedusha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is waiting to ultimately take us out on the 15th of Nisan, it all begins tonight. Because once that HaKadosh Baruch Hu delivers Rosh Chodesh into our hands, and Rosh Chodesh is significant of the beginning of the calendar year, so to speak, in which Klal Yisrael, how does the calendar work? We're spoiled because we have myzmanim.com and it tells you, if you print out the whole month, it tells you when the new month starts. But that's not the way that it always was. It was that Klal Yisrael is Koiveya. Klal Yisrael is the one, we are the ones who make the month. That's why it says in the Gemaras in Rosh Hashanah, the Mishnayos over there, how did it work? We had to look in the sky. We had to see the Chodesh in its renewal. We had to see the way it's going to look. And then we went to the Beis Din, and we would give our testimony in the Beis Din, and we tell the Beis Din, we saw the month in Nulayai filled in the sky. We saw the new moon, the way it's supposed to look at the beginning of the month. And they asked you, did it look like this? Did it look like that? Was it where was it? How high was it? And once they verified that our English, our testimony is true, they said, okay, Rosh Chodesh. That means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from now on, it's in your hands. It's no longer in the hands of the Mitzrayim, it's no longer in the hands of Paroi, it's not in the hands of myzmanim.com. The way in which every month is going to begin is because you, Klal Yisrael, you're in charge. And now the month, and the days that make up that month, and the days that make up the year, and every single nanosecond that there is in a day, everything belongs to you. And you're no longer slaves. That means the end of slavery of Klal Yisrael begins on Rosh Chodesh Nissan. And perhaps that's the answer. Rosh Chodesh, we say in the Haggadah, I would have thought that I could start telling over the story you see as Mitzrayim. I could start going through the Haggadah on Rosh Chodesh Nissan. What do you mean Rosh Chodesh Nissan? It's not the time of the Geulah. If the whole purpose of the Haggadah is to remind us of all of the miracles that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made, all the Nisim and Iflois, all the Geulah, the redemption that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought to us, Why would I think for Rosh Chodesh Nissan? Because of this sword over here. Because the sword is teaching us, in fact, the Geulah does begin tonight. The redemption does start on Rosh Chodesh Nissan. That Paro was no longer the ruler of Klal Yisrael, it ended with the mitzvah of Chodesh Hazer Lechem. It belongs to you, Rishon. It is Rishon Lechem. It's the first one for you. This is the beginning of Klal Yisrael. Rishon Lechem. It's the beginning of your nation. The nation of Klal Yisrael forms and begins tonight on Rosh Chodesh Nissan. It's a very big night. That means that really, in reality, I would have thought the Haggadah is correct. I really would have thought that since the purpose of telling over the Haggadah is to impress upon ourselves and anyone that's listening to us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us and He cares about us and He rescued us from the clutches of our enemy and He redeemed us and He took us out with signs and wonders and miracles. When did it start? It all started on Rosh Chodesh Nissan. And this really is the Or HaChaim HaKodesh writes on these words in the Chumash. He says the following. It's very particular that it says in the verse over here, this month belongs to you. What is the whole purpose of all of the months that we have? What's the greatness of a month? What's the greatness of a day? The greatness of a week? The greatness of a year? It's the way that Klal Yisrael will decide to use it and utilize their time wisely. The Timsa Sha'amru Razal Chazal teach us. Nisan Nigalo. In the month of Nisan we were redeemed. Nisan Asidim Ligoyal. And in the future, in the month of Nisan, we will be redeemed once again. This month, Nisan, is Mesuyim, it's complete, but completely for the benefit of Klal Yisrael. Because of that, Rishon, who it's the first, the beginning, that's where we start counting. There is a difference of opinions. At what point does the year begin? Does it begin in Tishrei when we celebrate Rosh Hashanah time? Or does it begin in Nisan right now when we start celebrating the festival of Pesach? So one of the opinions in the Gemara is that the year begins Nisan. Nisan is Rishon L'Chadashim. It's the first of all the months. Says the Or HaChaim, what does it mean, the first of all the month? It means that since that this was the month, like the Sforah is saying as well, that we were given the charge that we are going to be the ones that utilize the time of this world in the right way. And we will put in our efforts and our energies. Therefore, this becomes the starting point of how we're going to count the entire year before us. So we are sitting in the beginning of the month right now. It's not literally, according to all opinions already, Rabbeinu Tam and all, we're holding by Rosh Chodesh Nissan. And that means that a person already has to be preparing themselves. The Geulah is beginning. It's not just a conversation that we had at the Seder table. It's not just a shear that we're going to say. But Geulah, redemption, is beginning for Klal Yisrael tonight. It started in Mitzrayim, and it's going to continue through all the generations. And the Chodesh of Nisan is the month that we were Nigalo before, will be redeemed once again. And this perhaps is what we say later on in the Haggadah as well. B'chol dor v'ador, in every single generation, Chayiv Adam Liroy says Atzmai, a person is obligated to see themselves. I'ilu Yotzim in Mitzrayim, as if he went out of Mitzrayim himself. I don't know about you, but by the time that we usually get here to the Haggadah, it's after one cup of wine, and you're getting ready for the second cup of wine. It's usually late, you're hungry, the only taste that you have in your mouth is a little tiny, less than a kazayas of a potato or celery. You have some kids at the table are passing out, others are bored out of their minds. Some kids are actually engaged, believe it or not, in what is going on. But the last thing on my mind at that point is, wow, I feel like I've gone out of Mitzrayim. When you get to these words over here, this is after Pesach, Matzah, Maror, you're getting close to the Kiddush right before you're going to eat the meal. Does anybody say this? This is incredible. I look at myself as if I was Yotzim in Mitzrayim. I went out of Mitzrayim. Shenemar, like it says in the Torah, you have to tell your children on this night, Hashem took me out of Mitzrayim. Hashem took you out of Mitzrayim. You were there. You went out of Mitzrayim. Says the Haggadah, you have to feel at this point such chayvus, such freedom, that you are like one of the Yidden that was there at the gate of Mitzrayim, and you went out that night. Show of hands. Anybody feels that way? At this point, not done. You try. Guys, we also try. But do we feel it? That is the question. Not only did HaKadosh Baruch Hu redeem our forefathers, HaKadosh Baruch Hu redeemed us together with them. We were taken out of there, out of Mitzrayim. That we should be given the land of Eretz. How does a person get to this point on the night of the Haggadah that we are Yotzim in Mitzrayim, that we should feel that we are free? So perhaps the idea is what we've been speaking about up until this point, and this is the whole message of the Haggadah. And this is brought down already. Rav Chatzkel Levitch writes that why is it that when we are commanded to believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Torah, it says, Hashem, I believe in you because you took me out of Mitzrayim. If I'm the Rebbeinu Shalom and I am writing a Torah that I want you to believe in me, I should give you the biggest reason in the world that you should believe in me. And the biggest reason, hands down, that you should believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that he is a creator and he runs the world, is because he created the world. You should believe in me because I created the universe. And yet we don't say that. I believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu because he took us out of Mitzrayim. It says in Haskell Levenstein, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching us a very important thing, and this is a big portion of our Amunah, like the Sforno writes, why the Torah begins with all these stories to build up our Amunah. And that Amunah is the following, that just as HaKadosh Baruch Hu took Klal Yisrael out of Mitzrayim, which was the worst gullus that a person could ever imagine in their life, we were 49 levels of impurity. One more minute, like the Haggadah tells us, we were sunk into Mitzrayim forever and ever and ever, never gone free. But just as HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out of Mitzrayim, and he rescued us, and he saved us, and he brought us to freedom, a person has to remember that no matter wherever they are in life, whatever they are going through, whatever dullness, whatever exile a person might feel themselves that they are in, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out of Mitzrayim, and I believe in that 100%, I believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can take me out of my personal gullus, my personal Mitzrayim, my personal struggles, my trials, my tribulations. Hashem can take me out of all of that as well. How does a person get to the level on the night of the Seder where they will see themselves, literally says, like as if we went out of Mitzrayim, as if we went out of Egypt? When a person begins to examine their own life and they begin to think of their own things that they went through and their own last year of Mitzrayim in different things that were trying to trap us and confine us and hold us back, if a person realizes starting tonight the Geulah of Klal Yisrael is beginning, that there's freedom already that is in the air, there's chayros, I'm able to go to a new place, and I'm going to get there, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to take me out, and Hashem is going to lead me into the midbar, into the wilderness, and the enemies are not going to be around me anymore. So then a person is able to achieve their own Yetzias Mitzrayim starting now, and it culminates on the night of the Seder. The night of the Seder is a Yetzia, a revelation, and a Geulah and a redemption, not necessarily from the Mitzrayim of thousands of years ago, but it's the Mitzrayim that a person will find themselves in right now. I was listening today and yesterday to this very heart-wrenching story of a woman by the name of Mrs. Namdavar, I believe is her name. I don't know if you remember the story last year, right around somewhere in December. There was a car that was returning, a carload of young girls that was returning from a camp reunion. And in Woodmere, not far from the young girl's house, the car was in a terrible car crash. And one of the girls that was in the car was killed upon impact. I don't know if you remember this story. A young girl by the name of Lial Namdavar, I believe is the last name. And the mother was recently interviewed to tell over her story of the horrific pain and the shock and everything that she went through when she was woken up at 1 o'clock in the morning by Hatzalah, because they had to come and they had to tell her and they had to let her know that unfortunately the terrible news, Rahman al-Islam below Aleinu, the daughter was killed in a car crash. She said that besides that she had to go through all of the pain, and besides that she had to go through all the suffering and the tremendous shock and everything that was involved over there, she said that there were moments in the Shiva week, there were moments throughout the year, there's moments in her life, as you could probably understand, that she lives a life where she is wondering what in the world does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want of her. And she told over the following story. It was the third day of Shiva. She had gone to sleep the night before. Her husband, who had flown the body to Eretz Yisrael to bury their daughter in Eretz Yisrael, had come back already. And her kids everybody was distraught and everybody was a wreck, you can't even imagine. And her children were all sleeping in the bed with her. And they all, of course, they put on their pajamas before they went to sleep, and they took off all of their Shiva clothing and they put it in a big pile over there somewhere on one of the dressers. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, she wakes up and she looks around, she sees her children sleeping, her husband is sleeping, her mind is buzzing in pain. And she says she just sits at the edge of her bed and she just begins bawling and crying. And she starts saying, HaKadosh Baruch, I cannot take it. I cannot take it. I can't handle this. This is too much for me. I can't take it. Lord, nobody should ever know. She's crying and crying and crying and crying. Suddenly, she hears music playing in her room. And she says, now I'm really going crazy. Now I'm even hearing music in my head. This is crazy. And she starts looking around. Where in the world is the music coming from? And she's listening carefully, and as she's listening, she hears it's Ishtay Ribo, a song called Sibat HaSibot, which is the whole song is all about that Hashem is the cause of all of the causes of everything that happens in this world. And Hashem, are you sending me a message? What is going on over here at this point? And she's trying to find where's this music coming from. She hears as she's walking towards the pile of clothing that everyone had taken off for them to sleep. She hears the music is coming from there. She starts pulling off the clothes. And suddenly underneath the pile, she finds her daughter who was killed, her cell phone. What is my daughter's cell phone doing? Why is it playing music? And she picks up the phone and she looks and it says, there's a message, and it says, good morning, time to wake up. It's an alarm that her daughter set to wake herself up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and she has the song, Sibat HaSibot, that HaKadosh Baruch is the cause of everything in the world. She says to herself, first of all, how did my daughter's phone get here? Second of all, my daughter doesn't have an alarm on her phone. My husband wakes her up every single day at 6:20 in the morning. And it's not easy to wake her up. She loves to sleep. She's never up at 6 o'clock in the morning. She doesn't have an alarm. What's going on over here? So my husband wakes up and he hears the music and he walks in and says, what's going on? I don't know, look at the phone. I don't know, her phone is here. She has an alarm. I'm trying to have an alarm. Husband turns off the music and they just stand there crying together. And they don't understand what is HaKadosh Baruch Hu trying to say to them. He goes down to Shiva and they didn't really let anybody else besides family into the house during the week of Shiva. They were so devastated, they couldn't handle anybody else. And so their Sephardi Persian family, big families, and all the aunts and the uncles and the mama, June and the Baba, everybody's coming in, and the nieces are coming in as well. And she starts telling over the story of what happened to this. And she says to her kids, Leah had an alarm on her phone. She didn't have an alarm. We woke up every morning at 6:20. She never had an alarm. Does anybody know what this alarm is all about? So one of the nieces says, Doda, Anne, you don't know about the alarm? He says, no, I don't know about the alarm. That's what I'm asking. So I wouldn't have known about the alarm either. I wouldn't have slept over for the Shabbos 2 weeks ago. He says, 2 weeks ago, I was here for Shabbat. Leah and I were very good friends, and so I sleep in the room with her. We go into the room after the Suda, and the ceiling fan is on in her room. It's freezing. It's December. It's winter. It's the middle of the winter. It's freezing outside. It's like Makar Chaim. And I said to Leah, why is the fan on in your room? It's winter. It's freezing. She said, oh, I'm always hot. I'm boiling all the time. She said, if it's too hot, then I can't fall asleep. She said, and my parents leave the heat on, and it's very hot in the room. I need to put the fan on so that I can at least cool off and be able to go to sleep at night. She said, I'm so sorry. I should have thought that you were coming this Shabbos. I'm so sorry. And then I noticed that Leah is wearing a tank top. I said, Leah, it's December. Why are you wearing a tank top? She said, I'm telling you, it gets so hot at night. If I'm not cool, I can't sleep. She said, and I wear a tank top every night when I go to bed. And then she tells me, except in the morning, I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I put on a little bit more of a sneeze top, and then I go back to sleep at 6:20. She said, wait a second. You wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, you have an alarm that is set, you wake up and you put on something more modest, and then you go back to sleep for another 15, 20 minutes? If you're awake already, why don't you just get up? She said, no, because you don't understand. The reason I put on this more modest top is because my father wakes me up every morning. And when my father comes to wake me up every morning, why should I have to see me in the tank top? I'm nice to my father. So I put on something more modest, so that when he comes to wake me up, he sees me like that. So I said, if you're already awake, and you're only getting dressed so that your father won't see you in the tank top, why don't you just wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and get dressed and don't bother your parents? He said, you don't understand. I love when my father wakes me up in the morning. So I wake up early, I get dressed, yes, I go back into bed, I fall asleep right away, and then I get woken up in the sweetest and the warmest way possible that Father wakes me up. The mother said that to get that song and to see her daughter's phone, but she still doesn't know how in the world the phone, that was the phone that was in the car during the accident. 1 second before the accident took place, she had just texted one of her friends, Please remind me later to say Kriya Shema. 1 second before the car was in a crash. And she wasn't driving, by the way. She was sitting in the back or something. How the phone got into him, she has no idea. But then to hear that that's why the phone had an alarm, and to hear that's how she thought about her parents, she said, "Oh, that was like beginning of already a healing and a chama that comes to her." On the night of the Seder, a person is a person has an obligation to see themselves as if I myself am the one that went out of Mitzrayim. Which Mitzrayim? I don't know that you're going to be creative enough and you're going to be able to go deep enough into the life of the Jewish people when they were in Mitzrayim to imagine in your mind what it must have been like to be a slave. Maybe if you're smart and you hit yourself with some scallions on the night, maybe that will make you feel like you were a slave. I don't know. But by this time in our God, it's very hard to be holding in that place where you feel 100%. I look at myself as I went out of Mitzrayim proper, and I was part of the Jewish people that went out of there. But every single person has the ability for sure to imagine to themselves the entire night of the Seder that whatever it is that I am going through in my own life, whatever meitzar, whatever confines I find myself in my own life, whatever I need to be free from in my own life, on that for sure, I can look at myself that tonight I'm going free. And when does it start? It all starts from ROSH CHODESH NISSAN, which means everybody tonight should go home. And you should think to yourself, what is one thing, whether it's the last month, the last year, the last 5 years, the last 10 years, what is one thing that is a Mitzrayim in my life? What is one thing that is confining me in my life? What is one thing that is squeezing me in my life that is hurting my avodas Hashem, that is damaging my emunah, that is hurting my menuchas hanefesh, my peace of mind, that's damaging my midos toilos? What is one thing in my life that is Mitzrayim? And what am I going to do to begin to remove myself from that slavery? And it starts tonight. You know, we say, 30 days before a festival, a person has to begin preparing for that festival. So we see over here that 15 days before the Seder, you have to begin preparing for the Seder. And that is picking up your Mitzrayim and what you're going to work on. And it starts tonight. And that's what the Svarim is telling us, and that's what the Archam HaKadosh is telling us. And that is, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, that this Chodesh, it belongs to you. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch is giving us life. He's giving us life. He's giving us the Chira, He's giving us our freedom. You can choose and you can decide whatever you want to do with your life. It begins tonight. You want to change? You can change. You want freedom? You can have freedom. Do you think that a Jew has to live trapped in a jail cell in his brain for the rest of his life? You want to go free from whatever it is that's holding you back? You will begin to go free starting tonight. So we should be Zayich and Yetz Hashem. I'm sure that Baruch Hashem, nobody has too many horrible slavery, Mitzrayims that are going on in their own personal life. But just in case the person does have things that they feel are holding them back from becoming that Jew that they want to be. Remember, Klal Yisrael could not be Klal Yisrael while they were in Mitzrayim. While they were in Mitzrayim, sort of rights, you were not within your own shoes. You didn't have your own rights. You couldn't do what you wanted to do, say what you wanted to say, go where you wanted to go. You were enslaved by the Egyptians, which means you can't do what is the ratzon, what is the will of the neshama to do. It's only once that we received the mitzvah of Chodesh Hazeh, and it taught us that we can embark on a new path and a new life. Only then do we reclaim our independence and our freedom. You can start reclaiming your independence and your freedom. Nobody dictates your life. Nobody tells you what to do. Nobody enslaves you. But we cannot enslave ourselves either. Shlomo Rebbe Zevitzad Livracha tells over a famous story. He was always talking about the idea of a person being in control of themselves and not letting their tightness, not letting their desires and their foolishness control them. And he told over the story that there was a very high-end doctor who was a brilliant fellow, and he was top of his field. And he had one problem. He had a very rare disease. And because of the rare disease that he had, there was one food in the world that he's not allowed to eat. You might remember this story. One food in the world that he's not allowed to eat. He wasn't allowed to eat sardines. Okay, not such a bad thing. For most of us, if the only thing in the world that we could not eat was sardines, you'd be okay. You can still go to the coffee room, you can still have some Geulah, you can go down to Pat's and get a nice steak over there, drink a little glass of wine. Just you can't eat sardines. I think if you don't have to peel away the tan for the rest of your life and smell those sardines that have been in there for 24 years and they're still fresh, unbelievably, I think you'd be okay. But this doctor had a weakness. He loved sardines. Now, what happens when you eat sardines and you have this very rare disease? Your body somewhat goes into like convulsion mode. It cannot process the sardines that are going inside. You more or less have like some kind of a sardine seizure, and you have to be whisked away to the hospital, and they have to keep you under care for a few days to make sure that you're okay. So this doctor once came to speak to Rabbi about some Indian, but I forget exactly what it was, and they got into the topic of the sardines. And the doctor says to Rabbi, who was a person, Rabbi was like in total control of Olam Hazeh and his tightness. And he says to Rabbi, you know, I really love sardines. He said, okay, but you can't eat them because it's dangerous to your health. I don't eat them all year. Except every year on one day of the year, I decide it's sardine day. So Rebbe said, well, what happens to you? He says, my body convulses, I have like this sardine seizure, and I have to get whisked off to the hospital, and they have to put me under lock and care, and I have to make sure that for a few days that I'm okay. So Rebbe said, you know that it's a danger and it has to be your health. It's going to kill you. So in Rebbe's language, he said, the man looked at him and said, bow, wow. I don't. What can I do? I have a body, I have physical desires. I like sardines. I can't control myself. And Rabbi used this mindset to say, how foolish can a person be that we can enslave ourselves over the silliest and most foolish things in the entire world? You are sick to the core when you eat sardines. Why would you eat sardines? Just say no. So I'm not saying that anybody has a mitzvah that they have to contend with, but I would imagine that everybody has their own mitzvahs in their life. Some of them have been imposed upon us by others, and some of them we have imposed upon ourselves. And starting tonight, ROSH CHODESH NISSAN, the Chiddush, the new idea is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is introducing is you begin the Geulah, you begin the redemption tonight. If only you'll identify what it is that you need to work on, and you start making a game plan of how you're going to go free and get out of there, by the time that you come to the end of the Seder, right before you're about to make the second Kiddush on the cup of wine and be able to sit down to the Suda, a person should feel redeemed. They should feel that whatever it is that was bothering me up until now, it's leaving. It's no longer controlling me. And I have the right, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because I gave you the month, I gave you time, I gave you every second, I gave you every minute for you to do what you want to do. Use it for the right things, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu then is going to come to our rescue. And just like we were redeemed on the night of the 15th day of Nissan, and we went into the freedom which lasted us until this very day, so too, B'ez Hashem, each and every one of us will go through our own personal Geulah, redemption, will reach our own levels of freedom, and that will be the Yetzias Mitzrayim that we'll be able to point to ourselves and say, I feel as if I had gone free from Mitzrayim tonight, just like Klal Yisrael came from Mitzrayim thousands of years ago. we should be Zeichen Yitz Hashem to a very uplifting month of Nissan. You know, one of the greatest parts of the upliftingness is no tachanun for the rest of the month. But so many people like this month. No tachanun. We can even down a little bit later by midnight. You don't have to catch the tachanun in there. Yeah. So there's no tachanun, which is already a simcha, and there's a lot of Yom Tov and a lot of Chol Hamoed and a lot of preparation, and it should infuse us with the simcha that we're supposed to have of a person who is free is the happiest person in the world. May we be zeicher to reach our own Geulah. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring us our own Yitzias Mitzrayim for whatever it is that we need, either again that which is from the external forces in the world, or even those Mitzrayim that we put ourselves through on a daily basis. Unfortunately, give us the strength, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be in tune with ourselves and to redeem ourselves, but ultimately you. You didn't send an angel, you didn't send another kind of angel, you didn't send a new messenger. HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself comes on the night of Mitzrayim to rescue all of Klal Yisrael. Now HaKadosh Baruch Hu come to each and every one of us and bring us our ultimate redemption from our own Mitzrayim, which will be, as Chazal say, the Nissan Yigalu, in the month of Nissan we were redeemed, and once again in the month of Nissan Yigalu we will be redeemed again. In Be'era Be'er.